Welcome back everyone. Today we'll be discussing the Yeezy 350 Dazzling Blue once again. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Yeezy 350 Dazzling Blue and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like the recent Jordan 6 UNC shock drop, the Jordan 1 patent shock drop, LeBron scratch, or even the Jordan reserves, follow my Twitter KeithAdam10 and also personals for you. And of course, for early information before these drops actually occur, you can feel free to follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on the next restock, which will be soon. For those who don't know, the Yeezy 350 Dazzling Blue releases on February 26th, tomorrow. Retail will be $230, which is $10 higher than the prior 350 retail. Since this is an Adidas product and not Nike, I cannot confirm the stock myself, but based off of what corporate retailers are receiving these, and it being just a general release 350, it is pretty safe to say that there will be rather healthy stock on these, just like most general release Yeezy 350s. In order to determine if the Yeezy 350 Dazzling Blue will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially all the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically continue to decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding. Not the retail to resale initial margin, but rather just the hold margin over X period of time. Basically, even if they do go up, are they still going to be worth your time or not? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, stock for these appears to be quite high, like most 350s are, although not quite as high as we saw on those beluga reflective 350s that we saw some weeks ago. It's more likely going to be closer to what we saw on the recent Yeezy 350 Blue tint. Also, similar to the Yeezy 350 Blue tint, demand on these actually appears to be really solid, pretty much on par with what we saw on those blue tints. Contrary to the recent 500 blush we saw, the sale volume on these every day is actually really impressive. You can see alone on the screen right now just how many are occurring in the recent hour alone, and it's still all occurring over $300. There are also a notable amount of bids in this upper range as well, which is fantastic. This of course does make a lot of sense considering this is the first stripe Yeezy 350 that we have seen in a very long time, aside from the beluga reflective, which evidently also had immense demand initially. The Black Friday pack and Oreo 350s initially released with immense hype and have maintained that. Now we see this stripe coming back in the blue colorway for the very first time, so it's no wonder that many are excited for this colorway. Retail on these is just slightly higher than the usual 350 at $230, $10 higher than the typical retail, so this will of course negatively impact your margin, although by a very small amount. Hence, despite the slightly inflated retail, I am confident that these should still remain profitable with a decent to good margin. Nothing crazy by any means, but an easy money opportunity nonetheless, very similar to what we saw on the Yeezy 350 Blue tint. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their pre-drop decrease following the Finish Line and JD Sports early access pairs, Flex app reservation pre-sellers, and general early pairs. So this leaves the current average at about $320 for sizes 4 to 12. But of course, this is only the pre-drop average. Remember, we don't tend to include those very large sizes since they tend to be really big outliers and they tend to throw off the mean by a pretty significant amount. Anyway, we normally see a notable change post-US drop. This is when we normally experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. You guys should know what I'm referring to by now, as we discuss this very frequently, yet it almost always still occurs to some degree. Regarding the impulsivity effect, if you haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. Although, through late 2021 and 2022, it seems a 5% increase has been much more common. Now, that 5 to 10% increase isn't always the case, such as when a sneaker is already slightly overvalued. For example, of course, the Beluga release was a perfect example of the contrary, where they actually decreased by 5% post-drop for the reasons I mentioned in that seller hold video, and that's precisely what we did end up seeing. When it comes to these, on the other hand, since the stock will most likely be very close to that of the blue tint 350s, and pre-drop demand is also extremely close, I'd expect more or less the same outcome as what we saw on those blue tints. When it came to the blue tints, I was expecting only a 5% increase, and that's precisely what we ended up seeing. They ended up settling at about $326 post-drop. drop. However, since these are already averaging $320 pre-drop, I thus only expect a very minor 2% increase post-drop, but still positive nonetheless. Thus, this of course leaves the post-drop average potentially at $326, just like what we saw on the Yeezy 350 Blue tint post-drop. But now let's discuss what the price will look like once shipments go out in that 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation. Once again, since stock and demand on these is very similar to the Yeezy 350 Blue tint, I'd expect more or less the same outcome. When it came to those, we only ended up seeing about a 10% decrease, even though I was initially expecting a full 15% decrease, so I was a little bit off on that sense. Hence, I'd expect more or less the same results, allowing for a 10% post-shipment range decrease for these as well. Therefore, with a 10% decrease, we may see the average of 4 to 12 dip to around $293 after all shipments do go out within 1 to 2 weeks. So, some of the large sizes will be hovering over $300, while the smaller sizes will likely end up in the high 200 range. Now that the average price range at those points in time are evident though, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase from that post-shipment price or even hypothetically continue to decrease. When it comes to these, I feel some pretty useful comparison would have to be the Yeezy 350 white Oreo stripe. I think this is a more useful comparison to the Black Friday Yeezys, since those were extremely limited, while the Oreos were more of a general release. I also don't think it would be fair to compare these to the initial Beluga release, since those were the first ever 350 V2 in general. So when it came to the Yeezy 350 V2 Oreo, what exactly did we see initially? Well, considering Yeezy demand back then was much higher, being that there were simply less variants in circulation, in addition to stock on those Oreos still being less than what we see on general releases today, prices started at a whopping $500, making it seem like a good ROI would be extremely difficult to hit. However, within just over a year, these managed to hit in the 800 range, allowing for about a 60% ROI. Even though Yeezy hype was higher back then, you must keep in mind how impressive a 60% ROI is, given that they started so high already. Hence, with the current demand and relatively low pre-sale we see on these Dazzling Blues, I am certainly expecting these to increase and perhaps even rather quickly within just a couple of months. So finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time even if they do increase? While I'm not expecting these to increase as much as what we saw on those Oreos, you also have to keep in mind that those Oreos saw a 60% ROI even while starting at a whopping $500, making it that much more impressive. These, on the other hand, are starting in only the 300 range, allowing for much more room for a good ROI. Hence, even with the high general release stock, considering these are the first new stripe Yeezy aside from the Beluga 350 V2 Reflective that we've seen in a while, I could certainly see these increasing by a notable amount in just 1 year, and perhaps even after 1 year, eventually hitting $500. Since these are around $300 now, that would be about a 60% ROI in itself, which is really impressive. Hence, I am rating these a 7.5 out of 10, which is one of the highest ratings I've given in a while. I would have given them a 8 out of 10 normally, but I'm also considering the unpredictable risk of Adidas deciding to restock these at any time. I'll personally be holding the majority of my pairs for around 2 years or so, but of course, that's just my opinion, and this might all be completely wrong. I'm no wizard by any means. Also, just a note in general for anyone considering holding any items who do have low capital, you should never hold any items if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you do need money to go for all drops, try to sell these as soon as possible. Let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs down in the comments below. Since this is a discussion at the end of the day, I can't predict the future. This is just my personal analysis based on the data that I've acknowledged. We have a lot of brilliant minds watching the video right now, so I implore you to leave your notions down in the comments below as well. But anyway, that'll conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two, subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you stay 100% updated on all hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. Also, feel free to follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on restocks or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua if you want to keep up with the progress or restocks. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and Personals for You. This way you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that though, I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, good luck on this release, or if you already copped, congratulations.